My brother stole, my fiancée, and our family legacy. The paternity test exposed everything. The air this morning, on the crest of the eastern ridge of our vineyard, is cool and thick, with the scent of damp earth and imminent harvest. In my hand, a glass of the new vintage catches the nascent sunlight. The liquid, a deep, brooding garnet. It's a Syrah, our 24 vintage, and it's magnificent. There's a note of black pepper, a whisper of old leather, and something else. Something wild and ferocious, like the smell of a storm approaching from a great distance. It's the taste of the land, of the struggle, of survival. I close my eyes, and the scent transports me. It's not to another vintage, but to another time. I am 10 years old, standing on the sun-baked flagstone patio of my childhood home. The air smells of cut grass and my mother's prize-winning roses. In my small hands, I hold a heavy wooden case, a gift from my father, filled with beautiful, fragile glass instruments for testing soil. It smells of old wood and possibility. And then there is another smell, the sharp, clean scent of my brother Sebastian's cologne as he barrels past me, a flicker of something cold and sharp in his eyes, a split second before the world shatters at my feet. Some memories are not memories at all. They are ghosts that live in the senses. For years, I tried to bury them. I built a life on top of them, a fortress of silence and hard work. But the past has its own terroir, its own flavor profile that stubbornly infuses everything that grows after it. You cannot escape the taste of the earth you come from. You can only learn, with excruciating patience, how to cultivate it into something new, something clear. This is the story of how my world was systematically destroyed, and how, in the wreckage, I finally learned to make my own wine. My grandfather, Jonathan, died before I could form lasting memories of him, but he existed for me as a legend. A benevolent ghost who walked the rows of vines. He was the one who bought this land, who saw past the rock and scrubbed to the potential beneath. My father spoke of him with a reverence that bordered on worship. In the main house, there was a single photo of him, a lean, sun-weathered man with kind eyes, holding up a single, perfect cluster of grapes to the light. He believed the land spoke to you if you were quiet enough to listen, my father told me once, when I was very young. We were in the oldest part of the vineyard, the gnarled Zinfandel vines his father had planted with his own hands. He said the wine from this block was always the most honest, because these vines had struggled the most. He believed character came from enduring the hard seasons. He looked down at me, his gaze distant. You have the terroir of this place in you, Leo. That quiet patience. Not your brother. He's a hothouse flower. Beautiful, but fragile. He doesn't have the roots. It was the most profound compliment he had ever given me, and it became a secret talisman I held onto through the years. The soil testing kit he gifted me on my 10th birthday had been my grandfather's. It was a sacred object. After Sebastian shattered it and my mother swept the incident away with her breezy dismissals, I found my father in his workshop late that night. He was hunched over his workbench, the single lamp casting a pool of light on his large, calloused hands as he tried to mend the delicate glass. "It's no use," I whispered from the doorway. He looked up, his face a mask of weary sadness. "I know," he said. He picked up a piece of a shattered beaker, its edge wickedly sharp. "Some things, Leo, when they're broken by malice, can't be fixed perfectly. They'll always show the cracks. The best you can do is make them strong enough to work again." He set the piece down and looked at me. "That goes for people too." He was preparing me, I see now, for a life of being broken by my brother. Sebastian's cruelty was an art form, a constant, subtle poison. He never left a mark that could be easily seen. When I was 16, I had my first girlfriend. Her name was Maya, and she loved books and had a laugh like wind chimes. Our romance was a shy, gentle thing, built on shared secrets, whispered on park benches and notes left in library books. For the first time, I felt like someone saw me, Leo, not just the quiet brother of the dazzling Sebastian. Of course, Sebastian saw her as a new game. He was a hawk. I'd see him talking to her by her locker, his head bent close, his voice a confidential murmur. He was just being friendly, he claimed, just looking out for her. Slowly, Maya began to change. She grew distant, her laughter quieter. The breakup happened on a cold November afternoon in the sterile silence of the school library. "I just don't think we're a match, Leo," she'd said, her eyes fixed on a book she wasn't reading. "You're so serious. You're always so focused on the vineyard, on the future. You don't know how to just have fun." They were Sebastian's words, his criticisms, polished and delivered through her lips. He had painted me as a boring, passionless groundskeeper, and himself as the exciting alternative she deserved. The breakup was my first real heartbreak, and it taught me that my brother wouldn't just break my things. He would methodically dismantle any happiness I managed to find. The ultimate act of sabotage in our youth was aimed at my very future. When I was 17, I perfected an experimental syrup blend. For 2 years, I had babied that small batch, sleeping in the cellar during a cold snap to monitor the temperature. My father, in a rare display of public pride, allowed me to present it at a private tasting for our most important distributors. This was my moment. The guest of honor was Monsieur Dubois, a famed wine critic and an old, dear friend of my grandfather's. To earn his praise would be to receive a blessing from the past itself. The night before, Sebastian found me in the cellars. He swirled a glass, praised the aroma with a connoisseur's flair, and clapped me on the back. "Looks like you finally did it, big brother," he'd said with a dazzling smile. Grandfather would be proud. The words were so precisely what I wanted to hear that I fell for them completely. The next day, as I poured the wine, a wave of confusion and disgust rippled through the room. The wine was acidic, sour, utterly ruined. My blood ran cold. I saw M. Dubois discreetly push his glass away, his face a mask of profound disappointment. From the back of the room, Sebastian's voice dripped with false sympathy. "Tough break, Leo. Looks like you're still a few years away from the master's touch." On the silent drive home, my father didn't say a word. The weight of his disappointment was a physical presence in the car. That night, I packed a bag. I was ready to run. It was my father who stopped me, his hand on my shoulder, his face etched with a pain that mirrored my own. "Don't let him win," he said, his voice a low gravel. "The best revenge is not to flee, it is to endure." The letter from Bordeaux was supposed to be my vindication, a prestigious oenology scholarship. My application was my soul on paper. Sebastian's was a charming afterthought. I won, and then the letter was gone. His gaslighting was an actor's performance. "Are you sure, Leo? Maybe you just dreamed it." The discovery of the letter 3 months later in a box of his old trophies was the moment the earth finally cracked. My father's quiet, cold fury in his study that night was the sound of a dynasty fracturing. I listened from the stairs as Sebastian spun his lies. "I was protecting him," he'd claimed, his voice ringing with false sincerity. "The pressure would have crushed him. He's not built for that world, Dad. He's not strong like me." My father's reply was like the tolling of a great iron bell. "You are not qualified to determine what your brother is built for. You see his quiet as weakness because your own character is a cacophony of noise and self-interest. You didn't protect him. You sabotaged him. There is a rot in you, Sebastian, and I fear it is too deep to ever be cured." It was the end of his love for his golden boy, and it was the beginning of my true, painful education. I met Clara 7 years later. I was at a viticulture conference, reluctantly presenting a lecture on soil acidity. I was nervous, speaking in dry, technical terms, my voice a monotone, but she sought me out afterward. She was a landscape architect, and her eyes were bright with a genuine, intelligent curiosity. "The way you talk about terroir," she'd said, "it's like you're describing a person's soul. The history, the struggle, the climate, it's all in there." She saw me, the real me. Our courtship was a slow, gentle bloom. We spent hours walking the vineyard, her talking about light and form, me talking about pH and drainage. She loved the land, not for its name, but for its soul. Our love was a quiet, sturdy thing, a root system growing deep in solid ground. With her, the constant, low-grade anxiety I'd lived with my whole life began to recede. The day I introduced her to my family, I was terrified. Sebastian, home from his vague finance job in the city, turned on his lethal charm. My father watched him like a hawk, but that evening, as we sat on the porch, Clara took my hand. "Your brother is exhausting," she said with a laugh. "It's like he's always performing. It must have been difficult." She squeezed my hand. "I'm on your team." The relief I felt was so immense it almost brought me to my knees. This time, I thought it would be different. This time, I was not alone. Our engagement was on the crest of the eastern ridge at sunrise. I slipped a ring passed down from my grandfather on her finger. As the sky turned to gold, she looked at me, her eyes clear and honest, and said, "With you, Leo, I feel safe. Safe from all the family drama. You're different." I believed her. I believed we were invincible. We began to build a life. We spent months designing a small house for ourselves on the property, arguing playfully over blueprints. The foundation was poor, our future was taking physical form, but a serpent had entered our garden. Sebastian's visits became more frequent. His campaign against me was subtle, a masterpiece of passive aggression. We hosted a dinner party for some of Clara's colleagues. Sebastian spent the entire evening telling stories that subtly painted me as incompetent. The sour wine incident became a hilarious anecdote about my youthful folly. My dedication to the vineyard became an obsession that made me dull company. He did it all with a charming, self-deprecating laugh, framing it as brotherly teasing. I saw the doubt flicker in the eyes of Clara's friends. She defended me, but the poison was in the air. The near miss happened a few months before the wedding. I came home unexpectedly from a trip. I found them in the living room, sharing a bottle of my best reserve wine, their heads close together. The conversation stopped the second I walked in. "Just getting Clara's opinion on a new marketing idea?" Sebastian said smoothly. "She has such a great eye." Clara wouldn't meet my gaze. A cold dread washed over me, a feeling so familiar that I pushed it down, angry at myself for my own suspicion. To doubt her felt like a betrayal in itself. The final collapse came on a Tuesday in October. I was returning a day early from a conference, my heart light, a bottle of champagne on the passenger seat. I saw her car in the driveway and my heart soared. I walked into a house that was too still, the air thick with a secret. I went upstairs. The door to our bedroom was ajar. I heard a sound my brother's laugh, low and intimate. I pushed the door open. The world tilted on its axis. Time seemed to slow down, every detail sharpening into unbearable focus. The way the afternoon light fell across the rumpled sheets, the scent of her perfume mixed with his cologne, the careless drape of his shirt over my reading chair. It wasn't a scene of frantic passion. It was worse. It was a scene of lazy, comfortable intimacy. The intimacy of a secret long kept. My lungs forgot how to draw air. My ears filled with a roaring static. Clara scrambled up, her face a mask of utter horror. But Sebastian, my brother, slowly sat up, a look of cool, arrogant victory in his eyes. He had won. The final, ultimate game was his. The confrontation was a cacophony of her broken sobs and my suffocating silence. "Leo, please," she wept. "It was a mistake. I was weak. He wouldn't leave it alone." But Sebastian, ever the victor, delivered the checkmate. He looked past her, directly at me, and with a voice devoid of any emotion but triumph, he said, "There's more. She's pregnant." That night, after packing a single bag, I drove away from the house we had built together. I didn't know where I was going. 10 miles down the road, I pulled over into a deserted vineyard overlook, the same one where we'd gotten engaged, and I broke. It wasn't just a cry. It was a raw, guttural scream of pain torn from the deepest part of my soul, a sound of a man being erased from his own story. I hammered my fists against the steering wheel until my knuckles were bruised and bloody. The physical pain, a welcome distraction from the inferno in my heart. A few days later, her call came, a torrent of weeping apologies. I listened to the sound of her voice, once my greatest comfort, now the source of my deepest agony, and I hung up without saying a word. The 2 years that followed were a gray, featureless landscape of grief. I moved into my grandfather's old cottage on the far edge of the property, a self-imposed exile. The cottage was Spartan, a bed, a table, a wood stove. Its emptiness was a mirror of my own. I worked from before sunrise to after sunset, the burn in my muscles, the only thing that felt real. The vineyard was my monastery. The vines were my silent companions. They asked for nothing but work, and they did not lie. My only friend in that time was Matteo, the man in his 70s who had been our vineyard manager since my grandfather's time. He was gnarled and tough as an old vine, and he spoke very little. He'd simply appear with a flask of coffee in the morning or a sandwich in the afternoon and sit with me in silence as I ate. His presence was a quiet statement. "I see you. I know who you are." He was the family I had left. One evening, he found me on the ridge, watching the lights of the main house. "You grieve for a ghost boy," Matteo said, his voice raspy. "The son you thought you had. Grieve for him, and then you must let him go. The living need you more." My isolation from the main house was complete. My mother would call her voice a weapon of guilt. "Daniel is your son." "Leo," she'd say, the name a knife in my gut. A real man would be here for his child, no matter what the mother did. In one painful call, I finally broke. "He is not my son because she is not my fiancée." I yelled into the phone. "And you? You stood by and watched him do this my whole life? You watered the poison and called it a flower?" I hung up and blocked her number. Desperate to escape for a day, I drove to the city. I walked for hours, a ghost amidst the crowds. As I passed a high-end restaurant, I saw them through the window, Sebastian, Clara, and my mother, laughing with another couple. They looked so happy, so perfect. The sight was a physical blow, reaffirming the narrative of my defeat. I fled back to the vineyard, the sanctuary that was also my prison. That night, an invitation arrived in the mail for a college friend's wedding. I held the elegant card in my hands, the image of a happy couple mocking me. I threw it in the fire and watched it burn. The call came on a rainy Tuesday. My hands were stained with dirt and grape must. It was Clara. Her voice was unrecognizable, thin and fractured by panic. "Leo, it's Daniel. He's sick. We're at the hospital." She explained he had a rare autoimmune disorder, his small body attacking itself. My first visceral reaction was cold. "This is not my problem, Clara." I hung up. She called back instantly, her voice now a desperate sob, the beep of hospital machines in the background. "Please, Leo, I'm not asking for me. I'm asking for him. The doctors, they need to rule out certain genetic markers to find a treatment. They need your DNA to know for sure." The unspoken plea hung in the air. She needed me to prove I wasn't the father. The image of the laughing boy on the swing, now a sick child in a hospital bed, broke through the wall of my hatred. "I'll be there," I said. The drive was a journey through a landscape of ghosts. Every curve in the road held a memory. Driving with my father, a first date with Maya, bringing Clara home for the first time. The man driving to the hospital was not the same man who had fled down this road 2 years ago. The rage had burned down to a cold, hard ash. The hospital was a sterile, fluorescent hell. The wait was an exercise in torture. We were all there, in a small, windowless family waiting room. My parents, Sebastian, Clara, and me. A broken family trapped in a beige box. Sebastian paced like a caged wolf. Clara sat hunched, a ghost of the woman I once loved. My mother kept trying to offer me coffee, a pathetic attempt at a truce. My father and I sat in a silence that was not hostile, but ancient and weary. For hours, the only sounds were the hum of the vending machine and the frantic thumping of my own heart. That night, my father called a family meeting in the grand dining room. It felt like a tribunal. I placed the lab reports in the center of the polished table. The first showed I was not the father. The second, a court-ordered test on Sebastian, showed a 99.99% match. Sebastian exploded. He accused me of forgery, of conspiracy. He postured and raged. But Clara, completely broken, finally found her voice. It was a scream that came from the depths of her soul. "Stop it, Seb. Just stop it. It's over. Tell them the truth." My father stood up. He looked at my brother as if seeing him for the first time, without the golden haze of my mother's adoration. His monologue was an indictment, a verbal last will and testament. He recounted every transgression, every betrayal, starting with the broken tools my grandfather had passed down. "The broken tools?" he began, his voice low and trembling with a lifetime of suppressed rage. "The girlfriend you drove away, the wine you ruined, the scholarship you stole. And then this. You didn't just steal his fiancée, you tried to steal his son, his bloodline, his legacy." He walked around the table until he stood directly in front of Sebastian. "You are a parasite. You feed on the goodness and trust of others because there is nothing inside of you. You have used this family's name, its love, its resources, and you have poisoned everything you have touched. You are no longer my son." The words were an execution. "I am disowning you. You are written out of my will. You are removed from the Crimson Leaf Trust, effective immediately. This land, this legacy, will go to the one who has respected it. It will go to Leo." My mother shrieked, "John, no! He's our son! You can't!" My father turned to her, his eyes blazing. "I can. For 25 years, you have enabled this. You have been the soil for his poison. Now you will choose. You will stand with the son who has been wronged, or you will pack a bag and leave with the one who has done the wronging. The time for a middle ground is over." The drive home from the hospital was surreal. The hatred that had been my constant companion for 2 years was gone, burned away by the truth. In its place was a vast, hollow emptiness. There was no victory, no triumph, only the quiet, devastating finality of it all. 2 years have passed. My father is gone now, laid to rest on the hill overlooking the oldest vines, next to his own father. I visit him often, telling him about the harvest, about the business. It's a quiet conversation, but I feel he hears me. My mother lives in the main house, a quiet, diminished presence. She tends the rose gardens with a feverish devotion. Our conversations are polite, careful things. Last month, she tried to give me an old framed photo of me and Sebastian as children, smiling innocently. I looked at it for a long moment, then gently handed it back. "Thank you, Mom," I said, "but I prefer to remember the future." It was a kindness and a boundary. Some things cannot be mended, only accepted. The news from the outside world is grim. Sebastian and Clara separated. His financial schemes caught up with him. He faces legal trouble. Clara works as a waitress in a distant town. There is no triumph in this knowledge, only a vast, empty sadness for the lives they burned to the ground. My life is here. Mateo and I walk the rows together. His grandson, a bright young man with a passion for the land, is now my apprentice. The cycle of mentorship, of passing down knowledge earned through work, continues. The 24 Sierra, the one I named Clarity, just won a prestigious international gold medal. The night I found out, I took a bottle and a single glass up to the ridge. I poured a little on the ground for my father and grandfather, then filled the glass. The wine was even better than I remembered. The betrayal didn't just break me, it burned me down to the bedrock. And from that bedrock, something true could finally grow. I have learned that forgiveness is not about pardoning someone for their crimes. It is about refusing to be defined by them. The legacy my father and grandfather left me wasn't the land. Not really. It was the character to endure its seasons, to cultivate its soil, and to turn its bitter struggles into something of clarity and grace. And the harvest, I've finally learned, is bountiful.